In 1882, the Watertown Land Company purchased the Russell Farm and developed the lands into a highly desirable suburban neighborhood. The estate covered all the land from Common Street east to Russell Avenue. On this site, the Watertown Land Company built an affluent suburban area with a series of Queen Anne-style homes to the north and west of Watertown Square. These houses were large, single-family, upper-middle-class homes. The Russell development would become one of the first streetcar suburbs in the Boston area. Typical residents of the neighborhood included manufacturers, merchants, clerks, and several architects. 26 Russell Avenue, built in 1875 in the stick style, is known as the William W. Russell House. This house was likely already in existence when they began the development of Russell Avenue, and likely it became a standard for those which were to follow. The lot size, landscaped setting, together with the size and design importance of the house, affirmed suburbanites' expectations that they could live in a country-like setting without passing up the urban social experience of Boston. 46 Russell Avenue was built in 1885 in the Queen Anne style. It is known as the Henry Wilson House. 57 Russell Avenue, built in 1885, is a transition between Colonial Revival and Queen Anne styles. It's known as the Orlando W. Dimmick House. Schoolmaster at Wells School in Boston, Dimmick was the original resident of this house. He was a veteran of the Civil War, attaining the rank of captain, and was a prisoner of war for a time in Libby Prison in Virginia. Various members of the Dimmick family lived here until 1943. This house was the subject of a complete renovation in 1998 on the nationally syndicated PBS series This Old House, supervised by the current owner, Christian Nolan. 31 Russell Avenue, built in 1886 in the Queen Anne style, is known as the J.Q.A. Pierce House. J.Q.A. Pierce was born in 1817 in West Boylston and served as selectman for the town of Leominster. After living in Leominster for about 21 years, he spent 2 in Vermont and then moved to Watertown in 1867. He commuted to Boston, where he manufactured slippers. In Watertown, he maintained a number of real estate holdings and developed some property on Russell Avenue. He died in December of 1891. 37 Russell Avenue was built in 1889 in the stick style. It is known as the Horace Russell House. This house was originally occupied by Horace Russell, a house painter and paper hanger. He passed away in 1892. 38 Russell Avenue, built in 1890 in the Queen Anne style, is known as the William Pierce House. This home belonged to William and Elizabeth Pierce. William was an engineer with the Metropolitan Park Commission in Boston. Originally, this house was built for J.Q.A. Pierce, but he died in 1891, soon after the building's completion. William Pierce was J.Q.A.'s son. 49 Russell Avenue was built in 1891 and is known as the A.C. Stockin House. A.C. Stockin was listed as a clerk in the 1893 Watertown Directory. 65 Russell Avenue was built in 1893 in the Queen Anne style. It is known as the Arthur Stockin House. Stockin was a wood engraver on School Street in Boston and the original occupant of this home. The residence was likely designed by Watertown architect Alberto F. Haynes. Haynes designed 2 other houses for the Stockin family on Russell Avenue, one before this house and one after. Stockin's father, Abner, who lived next door at 49 Russell Avenue, had this house built for Arthur Stockin. 54 Russell Avenue was built in 1888 in the shingle style, however, since has been modified beyond recognition. It is known as the Albert H. Hartwell House. Hartwell was a superintendent with Hollingsworth and Whitney, a paper manufacturer at 24 Pleasant Street. 71 Russell Avenue was built in 1891 in the Colonial Revival style. It is known as the Theodore Robinson House. Robinson was a dealer of boots and shoes on Court Street in Boston. 77 Russell Avenue was built in 1894 in the shingle style. It is known as the William G. Snow House. It is likely that this house was designed by its first owner, who was a draftsman, William Snow. 85 Russell Avenue was built in 1892 in the Colonial Revival style. It is known as the Charles Russell House. Charles Russell owned this house but never resided here. He rented it to Henry Conant beginning in 1892. Later it was sold to Mrs. Georgia Tower, who resided here beginning in 1905. This house was the first in Watertown to be connected to the public sewer system in 1892. 25 Russell Avenue, built in 1895 in the Colonial Revival style, is known as the Albert B. Murdo House. Albert B. Murdo was a builder and contractor who had his offices at 17 Main Street in 1905. Murdo was an active builder in the town during this period of construction and growth. His house, described as a primer of Colonial Revival decorative detail, was located in a very central area of importance to a builder and contractor, in Watertown's most actively growing and affluent neighborhood. 90 Russell Avenue, built in 1898 in the shingle style, is known as the Alice and Harriet Norcross House. Harriet was a teacher in town. 93 Russell Avenue was built in 1893 in the Colonial Revival style. It's known as the Briggs E. Potter House. Potter owned Potter's Stables on Spring Street, which had a long history of providing hawk, livery, and boarding services. His relative, William H., with whom he owned this house, lived on nearby Garfield and was a wholesale grocer. 100 Russell Avenue was built in 1896 in the Queen Anne style. It is known as the Edwin L. Stone House, a local real estate agent, insurance, and mortgage broker who had an office on Main Street. 112 Russell Avenue was built in 1890 in the Colonial Revival style. It is known as the L. Sidney Cleveland House. Cleveland was the president of the Union Market National Bank and resided here from 1890 until early 1930s. 115 Russell Avenue was built in 1890 in the Queen Anne style. It is known as the Walter B. Snow House. Snow was the chief draftsman with B.F. Sturtevant Company, a firm that sold blowers and steam engines in Jamaica Plain. Snow served as trustee of the Watertown Free Public Library from 1901 to 1905. At 9 Russell Avenue, built in 1888 in the Gothic Revival style, is the Episcopal Church of the Good Shepherd. The church is located at the southern edge of the Russell family farmland. It was near enough to its parishioners and at the same time became part of a string of churches along Mount Auburn Street. The Reverend Rand, the first rector of the church, extolled the site for its proximity to other local historical sites and for its location on the corner of two fine streets. The church is in a neighborhood whose architecture is sure to be good and the adjoining grounds garden-like. It is along the line of cars running to Newton, Cambridge, and Boston.